like a Hellcat.
Hello and welcome back to the channel where once again it's time for another Sega Saturn review. Now today I'm covering a fighting game that I probably should have covered a very long time ago. I am talking about Virtua Fighter Remix, which saw a release over here in the PAL region in October of 1995. So if you're a Saturn owner, you will know that when the original Virtua Fighter came out, it was not a good looker at all. It looked outdated upon release. Without any texture map polygons, it looked very bland, very plain, low polygon count models as well. So what Sega did several months later was kind of to rectify that. They released Virtua Fighter Remix, which has character models which have got higher polygon counts and they are texture mapped. So much like the original Virtua Fighter, you hit that main menu, you've got arcade, VS and options. Heading into options, you can do your standard stuff, changing your life gauge, changing the number of match points, time limit, enemy difficulties, turning continues on or off, voice test, music test, checking the records, and you can check the control pad layout also. So once you hit the character screen, you'll see you've got Akira, Pi, Lau, Wolf, Jeffrey, Cage, Sarah and Jackie, your standard 8 characters to pick from, and it follows the standard formula of go through each of the 8 rounds before facing off against Dural and seeing the end credits.
Fight! 1. Ready, go!
So like I always do, I'm going to start out with the looks, and in comparison to the original release of Virtua Fighter, this game looks vastly superior. You will straight away notice that the characters have got higher polygon counts, they are texture mapped, they look far better than the original release of Virtua Fighter. Now the backgrounds pretty much look the same, they're very empty, very sparse, nothing going on there, but in terms of its presentation of the characters, they do look better. The game runs absolutely fine as well, it's really silky smooth. Of course, so it's not a showpiece for the Saturn, and 3 months later we had Virtua Fighter 2, which put this game to shame massively as well. The only negative really graphically or the way it performs is that sometimes the camera angles come out of line with the way you're facing, and that can prove to be a bit awkward. There are some little bits of glitching here and there as well, but it's not as bad as the original Virtua Fighter. So overall in the looks department, it's obviously a clear improvement over Virtua Fighter, but it's not one of the best looking 3D fighters on the system. So moving on to sound effects and music, and what I said a long time ago for Virtua Fighter was that it has a brilliant soundtrack, and it's still the case now, and that is without a doubt the very best part of the game and probably the main reason why you would go back to play this game, because the soundtrack is top quality stuff. Now the sound effects for all the fighting moves are pretty decent too. The voice sampling isn't the best, I can't pretend it isn't, but the fact that the soundtrack is top stuff means that in the sound effects and the music department, Virtua Fighter Remix is still a really good game, and what I will do of course is give you a few examples of the music for you to sample yourselves. So moving on to the gameplay, and anyone who's played a Virtua Fighter game will know that the Virtua Fighter series plays absolutely fantastic. The simple interface of block, punch and kick sounds primitive, but there is so much depth to the way that it plays in terms of learning all the moves, countering moves. It is such a great playing game, and it is still fun to play. And even though Virtua Fighter Remix is a game that came out in 1995, and it really is just a modified version of the original Virtua Fighter, it still plays fantastic. There isn't really anything negative to say about the way that it plays. Of course, the only downside is something I mentioned in the graphics department, and that the camera angle can sometimes mess up and then it disorientates your character in terms of the way they're facing, and you're not sure which buttons to press for the direction you're facing, and that is the only real downside with the way that it plays. Other than that, it is still a great playing fighting game.
KO.
So moving on to content and lifespan, and what we've got is 8 standard characters to select from. You can select Dural if you highlight Akira in the character selection screen and input a code, so that does give you one more character to play as. We've got arcade mode, we've got versus mode, we've got options, and we can unlock a ranking mode where you're given a grade after participating in the battles. You can also lock some additional options which will let you select what stage you want to battle on in a versus mode, and you can change the ring size too. But in terms of main bulk content, that really is learning all of the characters' moves and the way they play, in my opinion. The actual modes of play don't give you a lot of variety at all. You've got no team battle, you've got no time attack mode, nothing like that. It really is bare bones stuff, exactly what I said for the original Virtua Fighter. So in terms of content and lifespan, Virtua Fighter Remix isn't particularly strong. So like always, that leaves us with our 2 final questions. Is Virtua Fighter Remix still worth playing today, and does it make our Sega Saturn top 10? Well, unfortunately, Virtua Fighter Remix, as good as it plays and as well as it sounds, it's not worth playing today, simply because Virtua Fighter 2 surpassed it in pretty much every single way. So there really is no point in going back to a Virtua Fighter Remix. The only thing you might go back to is to listen to some of the soundtracks, but you can always put this game in your CD player and listen to them that way. In terms of it making our Sega Saturn top 10, well, no, it doesn't do it. It's not got enough content. It's a great playing fighting game, but it's nothing compared to Virtua Fighter 2, and that still remains very high in our Sega Saturn top 10. That is it for today. What are your thoughts on Virtua Fighter Remix? Do you feel like I do, that this should have been the game that came out upon the Saturn's release? And I think it would have done the Saturn much more justice if this version had came out rather than the Virtua Fighter that we had. But of course, that is just my thoughts alone. What are your thoughts on this game? Let me know down below. And as always, I'll be back in the near future with another review. Goodbye for now.